Hey guys, welcome back to the third and final episode of the mRNA trilogy. This episode will be about the future of mRNA vaccines and mRNA technology. If you haven't already seen the first two episodes, I would really recommend doing that because there is quite a bit that I unpacked there that would be really useful to know beforehand before watching this episode. As I've mentioned quite a few times in my previous videos, the potential for this technology to develop is immense, with the field having a high possibility of driving basic science for years. For example, Moderna has started exploring the possibility of developing an mRNA vaccine for HIV, and there's been a lot of development for other diseases such as the flu, tuberculosis, malaria, dengue, cancer, and influenza. In this video, I'll just be focusing on two diseases, being malaria and cancer. And first up, we've got malaria. Malaria is a disease that's relatively quite eradicated, especially in developed countries, but in developing countries, especially if they have tropical climates, malaria is a disease and that's quite widespread and it's quite a big problem. Malaria tends to cause flu-like symptoms, including nausea and fevers, and it's on a really intense scale. And it's caused by a parasite that constantly changes its shape. So our traditional vaccines, it's really hard to create a traditional vaccine for malaria. And it's also really easy for people to be reinfected with malaria. Now, if you remember in my first episode, I mentioned how the body's immune system takes a virus, let's get our Friday virus, and antibodies are essentially a mold of the outer shape of the virus. And so let's say this is our virus, the antibody would look something like this, and that's the antibody you have. And if the same strand, the same variant of malaria enters the body still has these memory cells that hold the antibodies to be able to attack it and break it apart. However, in the case of malaria, let's say this is our original shape. Suddenly, it starts mutating into something like this. The original antibody that looks like that isn't able to recognize this new variant of malaria and therefore is unable to break it down, and so this new variant of malaria breaks through the body's defenses and reinfects the person. And that's an issue because with our traditional vaccines, scientists have to constantly re-edit and find the new variant of malaria and create new vaccines every year, and so that's pretty hard. However, with the success of the mRNA vaccines for COVID, scientists started using RNA-based vaccines, using not mRNA, but something called saRNA. And this stands for self-amplifying RNA. And now let's say you've got your mRNA here. That's your mRNA here, it's injected into the body, and it produces a certain amount of proteins. With sRNA, however, only 1/100th of the sRNA is needed to produce the same amount of proteins that 100% of mRNA would. So to put that in more simpler terms, let's say you've got 100 ml of mRNA, and let's say this produces about 3 sets of proteins. Let's say 100 ml of mRNA produces 3 sets of proteins. Now, in the case of saRNA, only 1 ml of the saRNA is needed to produce the same amount of proteins. Isn't that amazing? Now, remember in my previous episodes, I had also said that one of the main issues of production for this technology was the cost. And because in one mRNA vaccine, there's a lot of mRNA that's needed for that vaccine. And because it's quite expensive to make, the vaccine itself is quite expensive to produce. However, in the case of saRNA, because so little of it is required to create the same immune response as injecting a normal mRNA vaccine, it's a lot more ideal. And that's one way that RNA technology has been developed in a way that's a lot more optimal, easy to produce, easy to distribute around the world. On the other hand, cancer, which is a lot more complicated and is a disease that scientists may never even have a single vaccine for. Because cancer isn't a foreign protein that enters your body. It's not a virus or a bacteria or a parasite. It's an extreme mutation of the cells. So for example, let's say you've got skin cancer. And let's say that's your skin. And let's say these are your cells, your skin cells. Now basically, if you get a sort of graze on your arm, typically what happens is that the body then has to almost re-stitch the cell back together, and they multiply the skin cells to almost fit in the little gaps. But the thing is, sometimes these cells can mutate in a way that makes them multiply at an alarming rate. And this is when it starts getting harmful. And skin cells aren't supposed to multiply this much. So in terms of RNA technology, what scientists are thinking of doing is instead using the RNA for immunotherapy instead of vaccines. So for example, because cancer originates on hundreds of different parts of the body, we could make almost specialized vaccines for certain cancers. For example, let's say this is your tumor, right? It's multiplying, there's cancer cells in it. So basically, what BioNTech, what their trials are doing for immunotherapy is taking out little samples from it and using mRNA in a way that, and coding the mRNA in a way that it produces proteins that look really similar to this tumor cell sample. And so in this way, just like how you almost train the immune system to scout out COVID-19 proteins, the spike proteins, in this way you can use it for cancer cells. Another place where they've been testing this technology for cancer is at the University of Arizona Cancer Center. And they've been testing with making personalized mRNA vaccines. So in one trial that they did, out of 10 participants, 2 of them had their tumors disappear, 5 of them had their tumors greatly shrink, while the other 3 didn't see as many results. Now, in some way, despite this may be a really small case study, but this is actually really groundbreaking because the scientists at the University of Arizona Cancer Center, they actually said that they weren't expecting to see such good results. And so in some way, this is really showing that this technology is being developed in a way that could even help cancer, maybe not cure it, but in a way that it could greatly reduce the speed at which it affects a person. I had actually interviewed Dr. Hena Kalik, who is a researcher at Oxford University and specializes in cancer immunotherapy treatments. And though I can't post the full interview on YouTube due to privacy reasons, I would like to end this short segment about cancer by talking about a few key takeaways that I got from that interview. Firstly, as I'd stated before, cancer is not caused by a foreign protein or a virus entering the body, but is actually caused by cells multiplying at an increased and uncontrollable rate. Another thing is that cancer is genetic. For example, women are 5 times more likely to have breast cancer if their mothers had it before them. This is why cancer can often actually vary from person to person, and is why researchers are mainly focused on making personalized cancer vaccines than more general ones, because it's different for everyone. And finally, mRNA is in every living thing, and the thing is, there is something called cancer antigens in the cells, and when researchers talk about having mRNA technology being the vaccines, they're actually talking about the mRNA of the cancer antigen, and this is the proteins that need to be made so that the person has more immunity against the cancer tumor cells. In short, it's really unlikely that there will ever be a one and only cure for cancer, and it's likely that we'll have to combine other treatments such as this mRNA vaccines with other technologies. mRNA technology was not developed overnight, and it's been a work in progress for decades. Our success with mRNA with the COVID-19 pandemic was honestly quite a bit of luck, and it was due to so much prior research from other scientists, not just about the technology itself, but also about coronaviruses such as SARS and MERS and its spike protein. Also, lots of other companies had done a lot of initial trials and research about this technology. For example, Merck, which had developed HIV vaccines, Pfizer, which did mRNA research for influenza and ended up using that for COVID. The mRNA technology we have today is because of so many factors and prior work of the blood, sweat, and tears of hundreds of other people. So in summary, I feel that we should honestly focus on any and other forms of research, as you never know what could lead to another breakthrough. mRNA technology was kept in the dark, and it honestly didn't surface until the COVID-19 pandemic. There's still lots of work to be done with this technology, for example, ensuring the same amount of proteins are produced with every dose, decreasing the intensity of side effects, making transportation and storage much easier, and reducing the amount of RNA needed in the vaccine because it's quite expensive to make. And it's not just the development of technologies. I genuinely feel that the world and governments have all learned a lot of things about our economies, about our connections with each other, and they all could be improved so that in case, and well, honestly, when another pandemic of this scale hits, we are all prepared for it and we are able to deal with it in the best way possible. But let's all take things one step at a time. By taking our boosters, keeping our hygiene, we all can do our part in seeing this pandemic through till the end, and I really believe that the end is definitely in sight. Thank you so much for watching. I had lots of fun making these videos. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my other 2 previous videos. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope you learned something.